Kellen was born with the ability to see glimpses of the future just by touching the bare skin of people, or even animals, with his hand. It was a gift that had run through his family generations ago, thought to have died out, but returned with him. While most people would see this as a blessing, Kellen saw it as a curse. He could see the future, but rarely change it. Even with this so-called gift, he couldn't save his father from dying in an accident. No matter how hard they tried to prevent it, it still happened. Since then, Kellen wore gloves all the time, so he wouldn't have to see anyone's future. It's not like anything would change if he saw it anyway. At school, Kellen was once the captain of the basketball team, until Clint showed up and took his position. Kellen hated him for it, but what made it worse was how smug Clint was about it, saying Kellen only lost the spot because he wasn't as good as he thought. Clint took everything, his friends, his popularity, all of it. Kellen hated how Clint acted like he was better than everyone, yet everyone liked and admired him. Kellen seemed to be the only one who couldn't stand him, and Clint enjoyed provoking him because of it. One day, after practice, while the basketball team was in the showers, Kellen finished and headed to his locker. On his way, he accidentally brushed hands with Clint for a split second. In that moment, he saw a flash of them kissing. He froze, shocked. He didn't want to believe something like that could happen. Clint was the person he hated most in the world. Why would he ever kiss him? He shook his head, convincing himself he must have seen it wrong. Still, he couldn't shake it off. The next day at school, he couldn't focus in class. His eyes kept drifting toward Clint. During break, while everyone else was out, Clint stayed behind in the classroom, sleeping with his head on his desk. Kellen, determined to prove to himself that what he saw was wrong, took off his gloves and quietly walked over to touch Clint again. Every vision he'd had before had come true, but this had to be a mistake. Just as he reached out to touch Clint's eyes opened and he grabbed Kellen's hand. "What are you doing?" Kellen's eyes widened in shock, frozen. He saw it again, him and Clint kissing. He let out a scream of disbelief, yanked his hand away, stumbled, and fell. He stared at Clint in shock. With his usual smug grin, Clint said, "Were you trying to take advantage of me in my sleep?" Kellen got up and ran out. Clint just watched him go, confused by his reaction. Still unwilling to believe what he saw, Kellen began touching passing students to test if his gift was malfunctioning. But each time, he saw their futures, some playing out before his eyes. Finally, he touched a classmate and saw him, planning to steal exam papers from the faculty office and getting expelled. Kellen asked, "Are you planning to steal the questions for the upcoming exam?" The classmate stared at him in shock. "How did you know?" Kellen just sighed. His gift was still working perfectly. "Don't do it. You'll get caught," he said, then walked away. Over the next few days, Kellen avoided Clint like the plague. Even during practice, he would rather fall than go anywhere near him. One evening, back at home and getting ready to do his homework, Kellen realized he had left it under his desk at school. His grades had already been slipping, and he couldn't afford to miss another assignment. It was also a lot of work, too much to finish if he waited until morning, so he decided to head back to school to grab it. Right as he snuck in, since the gates were already locked, and headed toward his classroom, a group of students ran past him. He recognized one of them as the classmate he had seen getting expelled for stealing exam sheets. Just then, he spotted a flashlight and heard the voice of the school guard approaching. If he got caught, he'd probably be mistaken as part of the group, and it would be hard to explain himself. Without much thought, he ran too, looking for a place to hide. As the guard came closer, Kellen went into a nearby locker. He pulled the door closed, and just as he let out a breath of relief, he felt his body press against someone else's. When he turned to see who it was, his lips brushed against theirs. There was absolutely no space between them in the cramped locker. Kellen's eyes widened when he saw Clint, who only smirked and said, "Hey." Kellen tried to back away, but there was no room. His back hit the locker wall, making a noise that could alert the guard. Instantly, Clint grabbed his arm and pulled him forward, a little too hard. Kellen's lips crashed into Clint's again. After a stunned pause, Kellen jerked his head back. Clint whispered teasingly, "Are you doing this on purpose?" Kellen scoffed. "It was clearly an accident, caused by you pulling me." He spoke a bit too loudly, and Clint quickly pressed a finger to his lips. "Shh." Their bodies were tightly pressed together. It was the only way they could both fit inside. Before Kellen could respond, the guard passed near their locker. They froze, not moving or speaking. Kellen stayed quiet, Clint's finger still on his lips. Eventually, the guard moved away. Clint leaned in even closer, if that was even possible, and peeked through the locker's vent to check if the coast was clear. Once he confirmed it, Kellen bit his finger and pushed the door open. Clint yelped in surprise and pain. As Kellen stepped out, Clint followed, rubbing his hand and grinning. I always thought you hated me so much because you secretly liked me and just didn't want to admit it. Now I'm convinced. Kellen rolled his eyes. What made you come to that ridiculous conclusion? Clint smirked. What just happened in there? Kellen asked. What happened? Clint simply pointed to his lips, pouting slightly, referring to the kiss. Kellen sighed in frustration. It was an accident, but you didn't seem to mind it, Clint said smugly. Kellen snapped. I know what you're trying to do. I won't fall for it. What were you even doing in the locker? Why can't I be in my own locker? Clint replied. Do you live in there? Kellen asked dryly. Clint finally admitted he had come back to grab something and instinctively hid when he heard the guard. Then he asked, What about you? Why were you here? None of your business, Kellen muttered, turning to walk away. When he finally got home, Kellen threw himself onto the bed, fuming. His mind kept replaying the moment with Clint in the locker, but slowly, he began to relax. He was glad the kiss he'd seen in the vision wasn't a sign that he had fallen in love or that they were in a relationship. It was just an accidental kiss with no meaning. The next day, Kellen was flabbergasted when Clint walked into class with his entire finger, the finger he had bitten, wrapped in an exaggeratedly huge bandage. Clint approached him, waving the finger dramatically with a fake pout. Look what you did to me, Kellen scoffed. Don't you think you're being a bit much? I didn't even bite that hard. How would you know how hard it was? You're not the one feeling the pain, Clint replied, holding his hand like it was a grave injury. Kellen rolled his eyes, already done with the conversation. He was determined to ignore Clint, until practice. When the coach asked Clint what happened to his finger, Clint casually said, Kellen broke it, but by accident. That day, it was Clint's turn to clean the court, but since he was injured, and Kellen had caused it, the coach told Kellen to clean in Clint's place. Kellen tried to protest, but the coach waved him off. As the rest of the team left, Kellen stormed over to Clint, who was comfortably lounging nearby. Is your only source of joy provoking and pissing me off? Clint looked up with innocent eyes. When did I do such a thing? Too irritated to respond, Kellen went to grab the cleaning supplies. He didn't want to waste another word on Clint. As he mopped, Clint sat back, watching him with a satisfied grin. When Kellen passed by, he accidentally mopped over Clint's shoes, then his pants, then his shirt, and finally, his face. Clint immediately jumped up in disgust. What the hell? Kellen kept mopping as if nothing was wrong, slowly pushing Clint toward the door. Once there, he gave him one final swipe, shoved him out, and locked the door behind him. He had realized something. Clint only got satisfaction from his angry reactions, so he wasn't going to give it to him anymore. For the next few days, Kellen ignored every one of Clint's attempts to provoke him. He kept a neutral expression. Even though he was boiling inside, it worked. He could see Clint's smirk fading more and more each day. Meanwhile, the students who had stolen the exam papers were finally caught and expelled. One day after school, Kellen stopped by the grocery store to pick up some things for his mom. As he was leaving, he noticed a woman's plastic bag had torn, her vegetables spilling across the sidewalk. She was frantically trying to gather them. Instinctively, Kellen knelt down to help. As their hands briefly touched, a familiar jolt ran through him. He realized too late. He wasn't wearing his gloves. A vision hit him. He saw the woman in a plane crash, and what shocked him the most was Clint, crying over her lifeless body. She must be someone important to him. After helping her gather the rest of her groceries, the woman smiled gratefully. Kellen hesitated, then asked, Do you happen to know Clint? Her face lit up. Of course, he's my son. She asked if he and Clint were friends. Not really, Kellen replied, forcing a smile. Kellen wrestled with what to do. Should he tell her? Would it even help? Sometimes even when someone avoided their predicted death, it only delayed the inevitable. But still, a little more time was better than none. He kept glancing at Clint the next day in school, his thoughts racing. Clint stood up and walked over with that familiar smirk. You keep staring at me. Is something on my face? Or are you just so in love you can't stop looking? Kellen sighed. He'd made up his mind. He asked, Is your mom flying anywhere soon? Clint blinked, surprised. Yeah, how do you know that? Kellen hesitated, then said, You have to stop her. The plane going to crash. Clint's face darkened. In an instant, He grabbed Kellen by the collar. Don't say that about my mother. I don't want to, Kellen said, calm but firm. But it's true. If you don't stop her, she'll die. Clint's grip slowly loosened. He stood frozen, mind spiraling. He couldn't believe it, but he couldn't risk it. His mom was all he had. He couldn't lose her. Then he remembered. The flight was today, in just a few hours. He bolted out of the classroom, frantically trying to call her while racing home. Thankfully, he got there just as she was stepping out of the house with her suitcase. It took all his energy, his words, his tears, and finally his arms tight around her to stop her from leaving. Somehow, he convinced her to stay. That night, Clint stayed glued to the TV, barely blinking, waiting for any news about a plane crash. Deep into the night, as he started to doze off on the couch, the news report came. He sat upright, heart pounding, eyes wide. A plane had crashed. No survivors. It was the same flight his mother had booked. If not for Kellen's warning, she would have been on it. Tears poured from Clint's eyes before he even realized he was crying. His whole body trembled as the weight of what could have happened hit him full force. The next morning at school, Kellen was taken aback when Clint suddenly pulled him into a tight embrace. So tight he could barely breathe. I can't breathe, Kellen muttered against his chest. Clint quickly let go. Sorry. But then he grabbed Kellen's hand. I don't know how you knew, but thank you. Thank you for telling me. You saved my mom. Kellen blinked, unsure how to respond. Okay, can you let go of my hand now? But Clint didn't. His voice cracked as he suddenly burst into tears. I don't know what I would have done if something happened to her. She's the only family I have. Kellen hesitated, torn between staying still or comforting him. Before he could decide, Clint hugged him again, burying his face in Kellen's shoulder, sobbing. With a tired sigh, Kellen let it happen and awkwardly patted his back. Just this once. Later, as class began and everyone took their seats, Kellen noticed his seatmate was sitting elsewhere, and Clint was slipping into the seat beside him, grinning. This isn't your seat, Kellen said flatly. I know, Clint said. I asked to switch. Why? Clint leaned closer, voice dropping. Do you have some kind of superpower? Kellen sighed heavily. Can you see the future or something? Is that why you always wear gloves? Clint reached toward Kellen's hand, but Kellen quickly pulled away. If you're going to sit here, he warned, then be quiet. Clint opened his mouth to speak again, but Kellen immediately raised his hand. Teacher, he's disturbing me. The teacher glanced up, noticing Clint's seat switch. She then asked him to return to his own seat. Kellen smirked with quiet satisfaction as he left. When the bell rang for break, Clint was back in front of Kellen's desk. Want to go out for break? No. Want me to get you a snack? No. Clint nodded and walked off. Kellen finally relaxed, thinking he was gone for good. But a few minutes later, Clint returned, sliding into the seat beside him and handing him a sandwich. I thought I said I didn't want you buying me anything. You did? Clint asked, acting clueless. Kellen rolled his eyes and pushed the sandwich back toward him. Clint raised an eyebrow. You want me to feed you? He unwrapped the sandwich and held it up to Kellen's mouth. Kellen gave him a flat look, snatched it out of his hand, and took a bite himself. Clint grinned and started eating his own sandwich. As they ate, a crumb stuck to the corner of Kellen's lips. Clint reached over and brushed it off with his thumb. Kellen gave him a sharp side eye, but didn't say anything. What the hell was that? And worse, why did it make his heart skip? As if nothing happened, Clint casually said, My mom asked me to invite you to dinner. She wants to thank you again for helping her with the groceries and for saving her life. No. I already told her you were coming, Clint said. She's cooking already. She'd be really hurt if you didn't show up. Kellen stared at him. That's your problem. Clint pouted, pulling out his best puppy eyes. That doesn't work on me, Kellen said, deadpan. And yet, after school, Kellen found himself at Clint's house. Clint's mom greeted him with the same warm smile. I hope I didn't inconvenience you by inviting you over, she said, ushering him in. I just really wanted to thank you. As they sat down to eat, Clint's mom, curious, eventually asked, How did you know about the plane crash? Kellen paused, then offered a half-truth. I just had a dream about it. Sometimes my dreams come true, so I got worried. Clint glanced at him unconvinced. Kellen had sounded far too certain back then, way more than someone just acting on a gut feeling. His mom, however, took his answer. You're definitely gifted. I'm so glad my son has someone like you as a friend. Kellen gave her a polite smile, a little awkward from all the appreciation. When it was time to leave, she turned to Clint, asking him to see Kellen off. Kellen quickly shook his head. No need. but Clint was already following him. Kellen sighed. He could already tell there was no stopping him. As they walked in silence for a bit, Clint suddenly asked, "So, should we be friends?" Kellen didn't even hesitate. "No." Clint glanced at him. "You didn't deny it when my mom said we were. I was just being polite," Kellen replied flatly. Clint then said, "I won't purposefully annoy you anymore." Kellen turned to look at him. "So you admit you were doing it on purpose?" Clint gave a sheepish smile. "Yeah, I admit it. But seriously? I won't do it again. Also," he added, "if you ever need anything or want a favor you can ask me." Kellen just gave a dry, unimpressed look. Not interested. He started walking faster, but Clint kept pace beside him all the way to the bus station. As Kellen stepped onto the platform, he turned back. "Make sure your mom never gets on a plane." Clint's smile faded. The gravity in Kellen's tone hit him hard. He nodded slowly. "Okay." In the following days, Clint followed Kellen everywhere at school, pestering him with his desire to be friends. Eventually getting tired of it, Kellen asked if Clint would do anything just for him to agree to be friends. Clint eagerly nodded. Kellen then told him to give up the team captain position and return it to him. Clint asked, "Are you sure you won't feel guilty if I actually do that?" Kellen replied, "You didn't feel guilty when you took it away from me." "I didn't take it from you," Clint said calmly. "Coach gave me the position because he thought I was best for it." "What? Are you saying Coach is petty enough to just hand your position to someone else for no reason?" Kellen hated that he had a point. The team had gotten better after Clint became captain. He was undeniably a strong leader, but Kellen wasn't going to admit that. Clint added, "Coach said your grades were slipping. He didn't want the team affecting your academics." "But I didn't agree to it," Kellen muttered. So Clint said, "You want me to go to Coach? Tell him I'm stepping down, and then you'll be friends with me?" Kellen rolled his eyes. "Forget it." Clint asked, "Is that the only reason you hate me?" "There are so many reasons to hate you. Can you name them?" "I'll work on it. The only thing I want from you is to leave me alone." And with that, Kellen walked away. The next day, and the one after that, Clint didn't show up at school or at practice. Kellen told himself he was relieved. Finally, some peace. But for some reason, he couldn't stop worrying. After basketball practice, Coach asked Kellen to go visit Clint's house to check on him. Kellen replied that he didn't know where Clint lived, and Coach brushed him off. "How can you not know where your best friend lives? Go check on him and report back to me." Kellen was stunned. Since when had he become Clint's best friend? He packed his bag, debating whether or not to go. Coach had asked him to, so he had to. But deep down, it was because he was worried and wanted to see Clint. When he arrived, Clint's mom met him at the gate. She said she had an important meeting at work and asked Kellen to go in. Relieved that Clint would have company while she was gone, Kellen asked what was wrong, and she explained Clint had developed a fever. She showed him Clint's room and hurried off. When Kellen walked in, Clint's face lit up as he tried to sit up. Before Clint could say anything, Kellen said, "Don't get the wrong idea. I'm only here because Coach asked me to check on you." Clint nodded, as if agreeing. Kellen added, "I've seen you now, so I'm leaving." Before he could turn, Clint said, "Are you really going to leave a sick person all alone?" Kellen replied, "You would have been alone if I hadn't come." Clint said, "But you did come. Just stay until my mom comes back." Kellen gave him a long stare before finally agreeing. "Fine." Clint smiled excitedly, patting the bed beside him for Kellen to sit. Kellen acted reluctant as he walked over and sat down. He looked at Clint, who was still smiling widely. "Are you sure you're sick? You don't even look like it." "I am. I was burning up before you came," Clint replied. Kellen raised his hand to check Clint's forehead, but realized he was still wearing gloves. Instead, he leaned in to check with his cheek. Just as his cheek was about to touch Clint's forehead, Clint placed a soft kiss on it. Kellen pulled back, startled, his heart racing. "Why did you do that?" Clint replied, "I thought you were asking for a kiss." "Why would I want a kiss from you? What's wrong with me?" "Everything." Clint grinned. "I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out you're actually in love with me." Kellen narrowed his eyes. "How delusional are you? At least I don't pretend to hate someone I actually like. I don't like you, but you love me. I thought you promised not to intentionally provoke me anymore." Clint asked sincerely, "Do you feel provoked?" "I was just joking." Kellen rolled his eyes without answering and stood to leave. Clint quickly grabbed his hand. "I'm sorry," but his grip slipped, and he was left holding only Kellen's glove. As Kellen turned to take it back, their hands brushed, and the moment their skin touched, Kellen had a vision. Him lying undressed next to Clint on a bed, and Clint watching him with a smirk. He immediately pulled away, wide-eyed, and rushed out of the room, leaving his glove behind. Why were all his visions about Clint like that? His heart pounded, and he couldn't tell if it was from running, Clint's teasing, or the vision. Meanwhile, Clint sat confused by Kellen's sudden shock and escape. He was now certain it had something to do with why Kellen always wore gloves. Over the next few days, Kellen made an effort to avoid being alone in any room with Clint or interacting with him at all. But that was impossible. Clint wouldn't leave him alone. It was as if the universe was trying to set them up. And to make things worse, they were paired up for a group assignment. Kellen asked the teacher to partner him with someone else, but the teacher refused. He had no choice but to work with Clint. After school, Clint came up to him and asked where they should meet to begin working on the assignment. He suggested his place, and Kellen immediately said, no. Clint then suggested Kellen's place, but Kellen refused that too. Clint asked if he had any place in mind. Clint agreed, and they both headed to a nearby cafe. Everything seemed fine, and Kellen began to relax, until it suddenly started raining heavily. They thought it would stop soon, but it poured well into the night. They waited it out, but the rain continued. Eventually, the cafe had to close and they were sent out. The downpour was so intense, it felt like it would beat against your skin if you stepped into it. Not a single person was outside. The cafe owner told them there was a motel nearby if they needed a place to stay, as it didn't look like the rain was going to stop anytime soon, and walking in that weather didn't seem safe. It was just near the cafe, they didn't even have to pass through the rain. The moment he heard motel, Kellen became flustered. His vision was coming true. He immediately said he would go to the bus station to catch a ride home, but was told no buses were running. It was too late, and the rain too harsh. He pulled out his phone to order a ride, but no taxis were operating either. Clint asked, why do you look so flustered? I think we should just head to the motel. Kellen shook his head vigorously. I'll just walk home. In this rain? Clint asked, stunned. Kellen nodded and was about to step into the storm, but Clint pulled him back. You'll get sick. We have an important exam coming up. I won't fall sick. I hardly ever get sick. Clint didn't listen. He just grabbed Kellen and dragged him along to the place. Since they didn't have much money, they could only afford one room. Kellen trailed behind Clint, still flustered. The moment they entered the room, Kellen grabbed a pillow, placed it on the floor, and declared he'd be sleeping there. Clint, confused, just said, okay? After calling their moms to explain the situation, Kellen started pacing around the room, refusing to sit or relax, while Clint had already settled into the bed. Won't you sleep? We've got school tomorrow, Clint asked. I'm not sleepy yet, Kellen replied. Nervous, he grabbed a random drink from the mini fridge and chugged it down. After a while, he started feeling hot and a bit dizzy. He checked the bottle and realized it was alcohol. Panicked, unsure of what he might do under the influence, he rushed to the bathroom, saying he'd sleep there, and locked the door. Clint sat on the bed, puzzled by Kellen's strange behavior. After a while, the bathroom door suddenly opened. Clint turned to see Kellen completely undressed, drunk, cheeks flushed, asking him to come join him in the shower. Clint's eyes widened in shock. He immediately covered them, ran to Kellen, and shut the door. He went to check what Kellen had drunk, and sure enough, it was alcohol. Just then, Kellen opened the door again and started walking toward him. Clint quickly grabbed a blanket, wrapped it around him, and pushed him onto the bed. How could you drink something without checking what it is? Seeing that Kellen had passed out, Clint gently positioned him properly on the bed, then climbed in too. But as soon as he got in, Kellen rolled closer to him, yanked his hand out from under the blanket, and placed it on Clint's chest, caressing it. Clint quickly grabbed his hand to stop him, trying to calm his own rising heartbeat. You have such pretty fingers, he said softly, playing with them. Why do you always hide them in gloves? Just then, Kellen abruptly withdrew his hand and slapped Clint's cheek. Clint was caught off guard. He turned to look at Kellen, surprised to see his eyes still closed. Do you hate me that much? You even slap me in your sleep? Then Kellen moved in closer. Their faces were just inches apart, lips nearly touching. Clint's heart raced. His eyes lingered on Kellen's lips, and he bit his own. He was tempted, so tempted to lean in and kiss him, but instead, he turned around, flustered, his face burning. He quickly got out of bed and impulsively went to wash their uniforms. The next morning, the moment Kellen opened his eyes, he first checked himself under the blanket. He was completely naked. Then he turned to see Clint smiling smugly at him. Good morning. Kellen mumbled nervously. What happened? Clint replied. What happened? What didn't happen? Kellen grew even more nervous. Did we? Clint moved closer to Kellen's face. Did we what? Kellen replied quietly. You know. Clint stared at him silently for a moment before chuckling. Relax. Nothing happened between us. I would never do that to you. But you did slap me. Kellen sighed in relief, a relieved smile spreading on his face. Oh, Clint asked. Oh, did you catch the part where I said you slapped me? Kellen replied casually. Yeah, as he got up from the bed. As Kellen pulled the covers with him to cover himself, he noticed Clint was also naked under the sheet. Kellen screamed in shock. Why are you naked too? Clint replied, I thought it would be best if I just washed our uniforms, so we wouldn't have to go home to change. Kellen said, you could have asked the staff for a robe or something. Clint scoffed. Staff? This is a 1-star motel, not a 5-star hotel. Kellen retorted, you could have at least kept your boxers on. Clint replied, you want me to go to school with no boxers on? Or wear dirty ones? Do you happen to wear dirty boxers to school? Kellen replied, no, then added, forget it, heading to the bathroom. They both got ready and dressed to go to school. On their way, sitting next to each other on the bus, embarrassment hit Kellen. Why had they slept naked in the same bed? What had gotten into him to undress completely? He wondered if anything more had happened between them. He didn't want to have any more visions of him and Clint. He was definitely going to keep the gloves on from now on, especially around Clint. But then, how could he know what else might come and how to stop it? Actually, he wasn't sure he could stop it at all. Just then, he felt Clint's head rest on his shoulder. Clint was dozing off. Kellen found himself looking down at him, playing with his ear and smiling softly. The moment he realized what he was doing, he immediately pushed Clint's head away, waking him so hard Clint felt a snap in his neck. Clint asked, can't you be kind enough to let me rest my head on your shoulder for even a minute? Kellen replied, not as boldly and meaning it less than usual. Does my shoulder look like a pillow? Clint just stared at him, sighed, and rested his head on the back of the seat to continue sleeping. Kellen kept glancing at him, not feeling himself, not feeling the hate he used to. When they finally got to school, they found it empty. Checking their phones, they realized there was no school because of the heavy rain causing flooding in many places. Clint remarked, so we came here for nothing? Kellen just turned and started walking away. Clint asked, where are you going? To my home, of course, Kellen replied. Clint said, since we're already here, why don't we go have some fun? There's a new arcade nearby. Kellen replied, okay, lead the way. Clint was caught off guard. Even though he asked, he wasn't expecting Kellen to agree. Really? You agree to go with me? Clint asked. Kellen shot back. Do you want me to change my mind? Clint quickly said, no, and put his arms around Kellen's neck to go, and Kellen took his hand off. As they arrived, they found the arcade still closed. It was only a.m. Of course it wasn't open yet. Clint's face fell in disappointment. He had finally gotten Kellen to agree to do something together, and now it wasn't happening. Clint asked, since the place isn't open yet, do you still want to go home? Without a word, Kellen started walking away. Clint hurried after him. Where are you going? Kellen didn't respond until they reached a hot dog stall. There, Clint realized what Kellen was doing. He bought 2 hot dogs and handed one to Clint. Clint blinked in surprise. You're giving this to me? Kellen shrugged. Who else? Clint took it with a happy smile. They grabbed some drinks and headed to a nearby bench to sit. They munched in silence for a while, until Clint noticed a Ferris wheel in the distance. Do you think it'll be open? He asked. We wouldn't know unless we go check, Kellen replied. A warm feeling bubbled inside Clint. For once, Kellen didn't seem eager to go home. He wanted to spend time with him. Just then, they saw the Ferris wheel slowly turning. It was open. They finished their food quickly, and Clint grabbed Kellen's hand as they headed over. There, they found themselves completely alone, just the 2 of them and the operator. No lines, no waiting. They could ride as many times as they wanted. Excited, they went in, enjoying the view. As the wheel neared the top, silence settled between them. Kellen recalled a myth. Couples who kissed at the Ferris wheel's highest point would have a love that lasted forever. But they weren't a couple, so it didn't apply, right? Clint grew quiet too, probably thinking the same thing. Kellen wondered if anything could happen that would make them kiss on the wheel, especially at the top. If it did, he would believe they were really meant to be. He kept stealing glances at Clint instead of the view, his mind spiraling. Just as they reached the top, the wheel suddenly stopped, causing them to lurch forward, and their lips crashed together in a kiss. Kellen's eyes widened in shock. It really happened. Clint was just as stunned. They pulled apart slowly, frozen for a moment. Awkward tension filled the air as they settled back into their seats. Kellen looked everywhere but at Clint, while Clint sat staring at him like he'd just discovered something important. Then they realized they were stuck. Kellen wondered how long they'd have to endure this silence. After a while, the wheel started moving again. The moment they touched down, Kellen bolted before Clint could even react. At home, he threw himself into bed, hiding under the covers, screaming and kicking his feet in frustration. But then he realized it wasn't frustration he felt, it was excitement. He had accidentally kissed someone he hated. He should have felt disgusted or annoyed. Instead, something warm stirred inside. Was he really falling for Clint? He kept kicking and screaming until his mom came in, asking why he was making such a racket. The next day at school, Clint approached him. I wanted to call or text you to check if you got home safely yesterday, he said, but then I realized I don't have your number. Before he knew it, Kellen was taking his phone, putting in his number. Clint hadn't even asked for it yet. Embarrassed, Kellen turned and hurried away. At lunch, Clint asked if he could sit with him. Without hesitation, Kellen said yes. The last straw came during a test when Clint asked to borrow a pencil. Kellen would never give out his personal belongings, especially not his favorite pencil. But this time, he handed it over without a second thought. He put his face and his hands on the table, sobbing dramatically. What was happening to him? Who was controlling him? Even after school, he willingly walked with Clint to the bus station. This continued day after day. The more Kellen tried to pull away, the closer he found himself to Clint. It was soon inter-school competitions, which were being held at their school. Kellen happened to overhear the cheer captain talking with her friends about confessing her feelings to Clint if they won the game. Given the team's flawless record ever since Clint joined, it was almost guaranteed they'd win. Kellen felt something boiling inside him at the mere thought of her confessing to Clint and Clint accepting it. Without thinking much, he walked over to their conversation with an innocent smile. He apologized for eavesdropping and interrupting them, but added that he didn't want her making a bad decision. Calmly, he told her Clint was a serial womanizer and had even contracted an STD from sleeping with too many girls. The cheer captain was stunned. Are you serious? She asked. Kellen nodded. I have no reason to lie. It's true. She thanked him for the warning and said she no longer liked Clint. As she and her friends walked off, a satisfied smile crept onto Kellen's face, but it quickly vanished. Realizing what he'd just done, he squatted down, covering his face with his hands and sobbing dramatically. What have I become? The games began, and as expected, Clint led the team to a flawless victory. When he scored the final point that secured their win, Kellen couldn't contain his excitement. Like everyone else, he rushed onto the court and jumped on Clint, wrapping him in a tight hug. Clint lifted him off the ground, twirling him with a laugh. The rest of the team paused, looking at them strangely. This wasn't normal. Noticing the eyes on him, Kellen quickly got down from Clint's embrace. Flustered, one teammate raised a brow. Did we miss something? Kellen immediately blurted out. There's nothing going on between us. They exchanged glances. We didn't ask that, one said, but now that you mention it. Before anything else could be said, their coach's voice interrupted, and Kellen let out a heavy sigh of relief. Later, after the team changed in the locker room and most had already left, Kellen was just about to leave when Clint suddenly blocked his path, pinning him against the lockers. What are you doing? Kellen asked, startled. Clint had a smirk on his lips. Why did you do that? Do what? I heard your conversation with the cheerleaders. Kellen's knees instantly went weak. He looked away, flustered. I don't know what you're talking about. Look at me and say that again. Kellen hesitated, then slowly turned his head. The moment his eyes met Clint's, his breath hitched. You've been acting weird lately, Clint said. What's going on? Nothing is going on, Kellen mumbled. Clint stepped back slightly, eyeing him. I don't want you to think I'm just teasing you. You like me, don't you? Kellen mumbled, stammering. I don't know. Clint smiled. That wasn't a no. I didn't ask for it, Kellen said, frustrated. It just happened. He sighed deeply. Why does it have to be you? Clint's voice lowered. Then who do you want it to be? You already have someone in mind? Kellen nodded. Clint took a step closer until their bodies were almost touching, his lips just an inch away from Kellen's. He raised an eyebrow and asked in a low voice, who? Their faces were now just inches apart. Kellen's eyes flickered between Clint's eyes and lips. He didn't even realize he was leaning in until their lips met. Kellen froze for a moment, caught between the instinct to pull back and the overwhelming urge to fall deeper. His eyes fluttered halfway, conflicted. But then he gave in, shutting his eyes completely as Clint leaned in more, deepening the kiss. Kellen's hands moved almost on their own, reaching up to wrap around Clint's neck, drawing him even closer. The kiss grew urgent and passionate, as if Kellen had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Then they heard footsteps. Kellen pulled away fast, pushing Clint away, and rushed out without looking back. Clint lost his balance and sprained his ankle. As the student walked in, Clint groaned sarcastically, "Great timing." Kellen rushed to the bathroom, lightly banging his head on the wall in embarrassment. "I confessed my feelings. I basically confessed. What the hell's wrong with me?" He stood in front of the mirror, staring at his flushed face, his lips still red and swollen. He raised a hand, gently brushing his fingers against his lips, remembering the soft warmth of Clint's. A shy smile crept up. Seeing his expression, he realized, "There's no saving me. I'm too deep in." He went to the nurse's office, asking for medication. The nurse asked what was wrong with him, and he replied, "A very serious mental illness." She blinked. "I can't help with that, but if something's really bothering you, you can always see the school counselor." As he got up to leave, the door opened, and Clint walked in limping. Kellen asked, "Why are you walking like that?" "I sprained my ankle after you pushed me." Kellen didn't believe Clint was that hurt, knowing him, but when Clint took off his socks for the nurse, Kellen saw the big bruise and was surprised. "I caused that?" Kellen asked with a sheepish expression. Clint nodded. Kellen stared at him with a guilty look, biting his lips. "You have to take responsibility," Clint said. Kellen asked, "What do you want me to do?" Clint replied, "Nothing much. Just let me lean on you and be my second leg till it's healed." Kellen agreed, "Okay, but don't try to take advantage of the situation and turn me into your servant, making me run unnecessary errands for you." Clint promised, "I just need you to help me walk." "I won't make you run errands for me," Kellen responded with a simple "oh." After the nurse finished wrapping Clint's ankle, he turned to Kellen and opened his arms expectantly. With a sigh, Kellen walked over to help him up. Clint, of course, took full advantage of the moment, wrapping his arms tightly around Kellen as he stood. "Do you have to hold me that tightly?" Kellen asked. Clint only smiled in satisfaction. As they walked, Clint said, "You really need medication because you don't want to like me?" Kellen shot back, "What's it to you? It's not like the feeling is mutual." Clint stopped, his expression perplexed. "We just kissed. Why would I kiss you if I didn't have feelings for you?" Kellen replied, "Aren't you like a playboy? Kissing someone without feelings isn't that surprising for you." Clint looked taken aback. "Is that really how you see me?" Kellen pressed on. "When did you start liking me then? Don't you just like teasing and pissing me off?" Clint responded, "Okay, I'll admit that's what it used to be. But getting close to you changed things. I found myself falling for you, even though you'd hardly been nice to me." Kellen was silent. He didn't know what to say. Clint let out a slow breath and added, "I'm not forcing you to accept your feelings. It's okay if you're not ready, or even if you never want to be with me." He then took off his watch, the one he always wore, and handed it to Kellen. "You can give it back to me. If you ever decide you're ready to accept me, you don't have to say anything. I'll know." Kellen looked down at the watch in his hands. "And what if I never want to give it back?" Clint's eyes dimmed slightly. That possibility clearly stung, but he still offered a small smile and said, "Just take your time." Later that night, Kellen lay in bed, staring at Clint's watch in his hands. He didn't feel reluctant anymore. He wasn't confused or disgusted by the idea of dating Clint. In fact, it almost felt like he had already accepted his feelings. He just didn't know what to do next. The following days were consumed by studying and extra lessons as finals neared. With each passing day, Kellen found himself glancing at the watch more often, wondering if it was finally time to return it. Once they graduated, they'd likely drift apart, and he might lose the chance. Clint waited patiently, though anxiety began to build as the days flew by. Finals were around the corner, and Kellen hadn't said a word about the watch. Clint tried to remind himself of what he had told Kellen, that he didn't have to return it, that there was no pressure. But deep down, he held onto a quiet hope. Then finals ended. Just like that, high school was over. Everyone was preparing to go their separate ways. Clint had almost completely lost hope. He figured he'd never see the watch again, until he opened his locker to clear it. Something fell to the floor. He looked down, and it was his watch. A grin broke out on his face, lighting up his whole expression. Without hesitation, he turned and dashed down the hallway, scanning for Kellen. He spotted him at his locker and ran over, tapping him on the shoulder. Kellen jumped slightly, startled. Clint just held up the watch, practically beaming. "I got your answer," he said, voice full of excitement. Kellen tried to hide the smile creeping onto his face and gave a small, bashful nod. Clint handed the watch back to Kellen, asking him to put it on for him, to seal the confirmation. Kellen took the watch, slipping it onto Clint's wrist. Just as he was about to fasten it, Clint grinned. "Once you put this on, I'm yours forever, no refunds." Kellen paused, pretending to think with a straight face. "Maybe I should rethink my decision." Clint immediately pushed Kellen's hand back to his wrist. "No, it's too late to change your mind." Kellen chuckled and secured the watch in place. Clint's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I really want to kiss you right now, all over your face." Kellen glanced around, blushing. "There are a lot of people around." Clint leaned in slightly. "My mom's not home. Won't be back until tomorrow," Kellen asked. So? Clint smiled. "Wanna come over? Maybe sleep over? I promise I won't do anything. Just a few kisses here and there." Kellen just turned away, continuing to clear out his locker. Clint's smile faltered slightly. "You're not coming?" Kellen replied, "I need to finish this first." Clint's face lit up again, immediately stepping in to help him finish quickly. As soon as they stepped inside and shut the door, Clint grabbed Kellen's face, showering him with kisses on the lips and all over his face. He then wrapped Kellen in a tight hug, squeezing him so hard that Kellen struggled to breathe. Despite the tight squeeze, Kellen was embracing Clint back, refusing to let go. They eventually settled on the bed, sitting together, with Clint holding Kellen's hand and playing with his fingers. Clint asked, "Will I ever get to hold your hand?" Kellen blinked. "You're holding it now." Clint looked down at the gloves. "I mean, your bare hands." Kellen sighed. Now that they were together, he couldn't keep his ability from Clint anymore. He told Clint about his gift, the ability to see the future by touching with his hands. Clint blinked, clearly surprised. He had his suspicions before, but hearing it confirmed still left him stunned. Kellen noticed his silence. "You don't believe me?" Clint quickly shook his head. "No, I do. I'm just a little shocked." A moment passed. Then Clint grinned. "Can you tell what I'm going to do next?" Kellen replied, "I can't really choose what I see, but let's try." He slipped off one of his gloves and gently took Clint's hand. Clint watched him with quiet fascination. A vision came to him. "I saw you putting a necklace on me," Kellen said. Clint's eyes widened in awe. "That's so accurate." "That's exactly what I was about to do." He pulled out a small box and opened it to reveal a necklace. Gently, he embraced Kellen and clasped it around his neck. Then Clint brought out another necklace. "A matching one? It's a couple set," he said, eyes twinkling. "Will you put this one on me too?" Kellen remarked, "Were you so confident we were going to get together? You already got a couple necklace?" Clint replied, "I wasn't actually. I was anxious every day, waiting for your answer." Kellen smiled faintly, took the necklace, and carefully clasped it around Clint's neck. When he finished, he left a soft peck on the side of Clint's lip. Clint was taken aback. He hadn't expected Kellen to take the initiative. Clint then said, "Can you move it to the side a bit?" Tracing his finger from the spot Kellen kissed to his actual lips, Kellen didn't hesitate and leaned in to kiss Clint properly on the lips. Clint grabbed a pillow, acting shy, squealing and rolling on the bed. Kellen watched him, chuckling, wondering why he was acting like they hadn't kissed before. Lifting his face from the pillow, Clint impulsively said to Kellen, "I love you." Then he immediately covered his mouth. "Did I say that too early?" Kellen shook his head and mumbled, "I love you too." Clint gasped, then screamed dramatically, getting up. "What are you doing?" Kellen laughed, grabbing his arm to pull him back down. But instead, Clint let himself fall onto Kellen, sending him flat onto the bed. Clint hovered over him, fingers gently running through Kellen's hair. "Say it again?" Kellen tilted his head, feigning ignorance. "Say what?" "That you love me." Kellen smirked mischievously. I love unicorns." Clint sat up and skecked, then huffed. "It's fine. I know I'll get to hear it many times in the future." Kellen responded, "Oh, can you see the future to now?" "Maybe," Clint replied, taking Kellen's hand. "Why do you wear gloves when you have such a cool superpower? Being able to see the future just by touching someone?" Kellen replied that even if he saw something, he couldn't do anything to change it. He couldn't save anyone. Clint said, "But you saved my mom." Kellen added, "I wish I could have saved my dad too." His face falling, eyes welling with tears, Clint's expression softened. "I'm sorry, I didn't know that." Kellen shook his head, trying to hold back the tears. Clint gently pulled him in by the back of the head, holding him close to comfort him. The rest of the day, to cheer Kellen up, Clint got them into activities to distract him, watching basketball matches, cooking dinner together. By nightfall, Clint was still trying to come up with a way to ask Kellen to stay over, only to find Kellen already asleep on his bed. He knelt beside him, smiling at the peaceful expression on his face. Gently, he tapped Kellen's nose with his finger and whispered, "You're not going home?" Kellen shifted slightly in his sleep, seeming to shake his head a little. Clint grinned, taking that as a yes. He climbed into bed, slipping an arm beneath Kellen's head and pulling him close. He kissed his forehead before wrapping him in a cuddle, drifting off to sleep. Sometime later, Kellen stirred awake. Clint was still fast asleep, arms wrapped tightly around him, mouth slightly open. Kellen watched him, giggling quietly. Then a curious thought crossed his mind. What does their future look like? Quietly, Kellen lifted his hand and cupped Clint's cheek, waiting for a vision to come. Nothing. He tried again, touching his hand, other bare parts of his body, still nothing. Kellen's unease grew as he wondered if he'd lost his gift. Despite not always wanting to use it, the thought of losing it bothered him. In his sleep, Clint shifted, pulling Kellen closer. Kellen decided to let it go for the night and try to sleep, but he couldn't. His mind kept racing. When he got back home, he tried using his ability on his mom, but still couldn't see anything. He told her he might have lost his gift. She then called Kellen's grandmother, who had a lot of knowledge about it. She explained that he had simply reached a new stage in his development. As Kellen matured, his gift evolved, requiring more intention and focus to activate. He could now choose specific moments in the future to see, but it would take training and practice to master. Kellen was torn. Did he really want to invest time and effort on a gift he'd spent most of his life avoiding? With their break before university starts, Kellen and Clint went on many dates and spent almost every day together, knowing they'd be separated for a long time since they applied to different universities, making it unlikely they'd end up at the same one. Kellen, who had changed his school preferences to avoid Clint, now regretted it, but it was too late. They couldn't see each other on, and the day before leaving for school, too busy with last-minute preparations. After they both arrived at their respective schools, settled into their dorms, they spent the rest of the night talking on the phone. Every day, they called or texted. Clint would mention, almost every second, how much he missed Kellen. Kellen missed him just as much, maybe even more, but he acted cool about it. He probably missed Clint more than Clint missed him, because on his first free day, he found himself on a plane flying to Clint's. Using their shared location, he tracked Clint down and found him at a basketball court, playing with what seemed to be his new friends. Kellen's heart skipped a beat at the sight of him. He stood there quietly, not wanting to interrupt the game. Mid-game, Clint took a break. Kellen was excited, waiting for Clint to notice him. But just then, a girl stepped in and handed Clint a bottle of water, which he accepted. Kellen's soft gaze immediately turned into a glare. Clint must have felt it, because he turned to Kellen's direction instantly. His face lit up in surprise and joy as he ran toward Kellen to hug him. But Kellen moved aside, dodging the embrace. Still glaring, Clint looked confused. When he noticed Kellen's eyes on the bottle of water, he quickly returned it to the girl and rushed back. "We're not close or anything," he said. "I just took the water because I was really thirsty." Kellen rolled his eyes. "I didn't ask," he said and turned to walk away. Clint followed quickly. "You didn't tell me you were coming. If you'd come tomorrow, you wouldn't have met me here. I would have been at your place. I've been dying from missing you." Kellen replied, "You say you miss me so casually. You don't really mean it. You're busy playing basketball with your new friends and flirting with girls." Clint quickly explained, "I'm only out here today because my roommates dragged me out. They were tired of seeing me lovesick. I don't flirt or give anyone attention. Everyone here knows I'm taken. They even know you. You're all I ever talk about. They're probably sick of hearing your name." Kellen just stared at him with a sheepish expression. Then Clint added, "You don't trust me?" Kellen muttered, "It's not that. I was just being salty. I didn't mean it like that." Clint pouted, "You even dodged my hug. I was so excited to see you." Kellen immediately stepped forward and hugged Clint tightly. "I'm sorry." Clint's face melted into a soft smile as he hugged him back, patting his hair. Clint took Kellen to his dorm room. It was Kellen's first time there, and he looked around curiously while Clint stood watching him with longing. "I really want to kiss you," Clint said. "What's stopping you?" Kellen replied, "I don't think it's going to stop at just kissing." Hearing that, Kellen's breath hitched. He suddenly felt hot and started fanning himself with his hand. Clint stepped closer. But I don't want our first time to be in a school dorm. Kellen let out the breath he was holding. Oh. His mind had already run wild, expecting something to happen. Clint chuckled. You sound disappointed. Were you expecting something? Kellen quickly denied. No. Clint grinned. Okay, I'll act like I believe you. Kellen bit his lip and asked, Is the kiss still happening though? Clint stepped back with a teasing shrug. Kellen moved in, grabbed the back of Clint's neck, and kissed him hard. Clint playfully bit his lip, making Kellen flinch back. Ouch. Clint smiled, then leaned in and softly captured Kellen's lips again. A slow, gentle kiss full of longing. They spent the rest of the day together. Clint gave Kellen a tour of the campus. Then they returned to his dorm, where they lay tangled in bed, talking, cuddling, and sharing kisses. At some point, Kellen asked, Why haven't your roommates come back? Clint gave a cheeky grin. I don't know. He had bribed them to not come back. Kellen could only stay one night, and the next morning Clint escorted him to the airport, but didn't stop there. He boarded the flight with him. He had already bought a ticket to visit Kellen, and he wasn't about to waste it. They got to spend another day together. Distance and busy schedules never kept them apart for long. They called and texted every single day, and anytime they had a free day, even just one, they were hopping on a plane to see each other. Their wallets may have suffered, but they didn't care. All that mattered was being together, even for a moment. The distance only made them yearn for each other more and brought them closer than ever.